and only the best is good enough for Africa. Happy 60th anniversary. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Asante sana. Shukran. Muito obrigado.
Thank you, Mr. President, for your insightful statement. May I invite His Excellency, Mr. Musa Faki Mahamat, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, to make a brief statement.
Excellences, Monsieur le chef d'État et de gouvernement, Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres, distingués invités. Il y a 61 ans, naissait l'Organisation de l'Unité africaine, actuellement Union africaine. Un an après, l'Organisation continentale a mis au monde son premier enfant, c'est sa fille, la Banque africaine de développement. Les anniversaires sont des moments certes de réjouissance, mais aussi et surtout d'évaluation du parcours et de projections dans l'avenir. La Banque africaine du développement a fait un excellent travail pour l'Afrique durant les 6 décennies passées. Son portefeuille dans chacun des États membres est fort consistant. L'Union africaine, vous le savez, s'est donnée à l'occasion de son 50e anniversaire en 2013 l'agenda 2063, qui peut se résumer dans le triptyque une Afrique intégrée, une Afrique prospère et une Afrique en paix. Elle a chargé la Banque africaine de développement de mobiliser les ressources nécessaires dans le continent et au-delà pour financer cet agenda. Cet agenda dessine des projets phares en matière d'infrastructure, d'énergie, de sécurité alimentaire, de santé, d'éducation. Il est fort ambitieux. Merci, cher frère Dr Adesina, pour les efforts accomplis jusqu'à là pour la réalisation de l'Afrique que nous voulons. Aujourd'hui, 60 ans après, notre continent fait face encore à des défis très importants. Certes, nous ne sommes pas comme au début des indépendances dans les années 60. Beaucoup a été fait. Mais je crois que l'autosatisfaction n'est pas de mise. De même, l'autoflagellation. Il faut trouver donc la juste appréciation entre les deux. L'Afrique aujourd'hui reste un continent qui a de sérieux problèmes de manque d'infrastructures. Nous avons lancé la zone de libre-échange continentale. Le président Sassou Nguesso l'a dit, elle ne pourrait jamais être effective tant que physiquement on ne peut pas connecter les différentes parties du continent. Donc, les défis importants restent celui des infrastructures. L'Union africaine a mis en place une institution spécialisée qui est l'ODANEPAD en la matière et travaille main dans la main, entre autres avec la Banque africaine de développement. L'énergie, cela a aussi été dit. Près de 600 millions d'Africains ne connaissent pas encore l'électricité. Comment on peut envisager un développement réel sans l'énergie? Un autre très grand défi, et je suis heureux, tout comme le président Sassou, qu'il ait été annoncé 300 millions d'Africains qui seraient connectés d'ici 2030 et on aurait réduit de 50% ceux qui n'avaient pas accès à l'électricité. C'est un défi majeur et j'encourage fortement la Banque africaine de développement à s'investir davantage. La BAD ne peut pas faire mieux si elle n'a pas d'abord le soutien des États membres. Soutien financier et surtout soutien politique qui doit lui permettre d'occuper sa place et toute sa place pour le progrès dans ce continent. Un autre phénomène annihile un peu les efforts dans le continent africain, c'est les questions de paix et de stabilité. L'Union africaine a revitalisé son fonds de la paix. Aujourd'hui, nous avoisinons les 400 millions de dollars, ce qui va nous permettre de travailler un peu dans l'amélioration. Mais l'Afrique est touchée également par le phénomène du terrorisme, qui est une menace à la paix et à la sécurité internationale. Et ça, vous le savez, cela est du ressort du Conseil de sécurité des Nations Unies. Heureusement qu'il y a l'année dernière une résolution qui s'engage à financer 75% des opérations de paix menées par l'Union africaine, notamment dans la lutte contre le terrorisme dans le continent africain. Il reste 25% des gaps à trouver également pour financer à 100% la paix et la stabilité dans le continent africain. Je souhaite, et la BAD a déjà commencé à le faire, à penser au financement de la sécurité. Si on n'a pas la sécurité, on n'a pas l'instabilité, eh bien, nous n'allons jamais améliorer notre notation, et c'est là, vous les professionnels, vous le savez très bien, sur les narratifs et sur la situation donc, de notre continent. C'est un défi majeur sur lequel il faut absolument réfléchir. L'Union africaine est en pleine réforme. Je remercie le président Kagame et le président Ruto qui, de concert avec la Commission, mènent cette très difficile réforme. Nous avons là également accompli des progrès, mais il n'en demeure pas moins. Et je l'ai dit avec beaucoup de regrets, il manque encore suffisamment de volonté politique au niveau de nos États pour pousser, parce qu'il faut parler d'une seule voix, ce qui n'est malheureusement pas encore le cas dans différentes situations. L'Afrique, l'Union africaine, la Banque africaine de développement ne peuvent porter le rêve de ce continent qu'en étant unis, intégrés et parlant d'une seule voix. Dans un monde qui, vous le savez, est en plein bouleversement. Et pour avoir droit au chapitre, il faut partir unis. Donc l'intégration, la prospérité est intimement liée et à l'intégration de nos économies et à la stabilité et à la paix. Il nous faut donc des efforts importants à accomplir. On peut compter sur le génie des peuples africains, sur le dynamisme de sa jeunesse, de la majorité de sa population que sont les femmes, et j'interpelle le leadership africain sur la nécessité de se concentrer, d'améliorer la gouvernance politique et économique dans notre continent pour nous donner les meilleurs moyens pour soutenir nos actions pour l'Afrique que nous voulons. Bon anniversaire pour la BAD et je vous remercie.
Thank you, Chairperson of the African Union Commission. Without the OAU, there would have not been an African Development Bank. Thank you, and thank you for the partnership. May I invite His Excellency, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya, to make some brief remarks.
Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, indulge me because I have been asked actually instructed, I think, by President Sassou Nguesso to give a progress report on the meeting we had in Paris on the financing pact. And you know, in keeping with African tradition, when an elder gives instructions, you have to obey. So let me give a brief progress report, and I hope he will be listening. After the meetings we had in Paris, we subsequently had the Africa Climate Summit, in which we consolidated our position as a continent. And we were clear on what kind of financing infrastructure that we were looking for. Number one, we were looking for concessionary resources that would make sense to our development. Number two, we were looking for long-term resources that had grace periods of up to 10 years and repayment periods of up to 40 years. Number three, we wanted these resources at scale. And number four, we were very clear that these resources were meant for the financing of our development. We subsequently took our position to COP28, and we had a very positive conversation. And finally, we launched the Africa Green Industrialization Initiative that will provide a mechanism for investment in our green energy resources to facilitate industrialization, to create jobs, to create wealth, and to move Africa to the next level. Subsequently, we came here a month ago, and by the time we were in COP28, the difficulties we had in Paris of whether we need reform of the international financial architecture. You remember the heated conversation we had in Paris, because many countries in Paris did not believe that there was a requirement or there was need of whatever nature for the transformation and reform of the international financial architecture. But by the time we were getting in December, in COP28, there was concurrence in Europe, in America, in Asia, and of course in Africa, that there was need. And everybody agreed that there was need to reform these financial institutions. Fast forward, last month, we had a meeting here with the World Bank to discuss concessionary resources in the IDA window replenishment 21. We made very good progress with the World Bank in that framework. Step forward, last week, the outcome of my visit to the United States, there were two significant outcomes. Outcome number one is investment of $1 billion for the first data center powered by green energy in Kenya. And number two, after extensive consultations with President Biden, and because he confirmed to me that he believed in the transformation of Africa and he wanted to support, because of the conversations we had, you remember, at the Africa Leaders Summit in America last year. And because America is a big contributor both to IDA and to Africa Development Fund, President Biden committed $21 billion that will go to some of it to the two institutions, World Bank, IDA framework, and Africa Development Bank's Africa Development Fund program, which we are discussing here today. The replenishment the 25 billion Adesina is looking for the Africa Development Fund. And today, Mr. President, we are furthering that conversation with the confirmations we're going to make to enhance significant funding, concessional resources to Africa Development Fund so that we can meet the targets where we wanted, concessional funding, long-term resources, and at scale. I hope I have made a good case and I have met the pass mark. Your Excellencies, I acknowledge the insightful remarks you have made on Africa's prospects. Your words underline the critical need to match our continent's immense potential with corresponding concessional financing and action. I reiterate that there is a clear necessity for increased funding in the next replenishment cycle of Africa Development Fund with a target of not less than US dollars 25 billion. Looking ahead, the Africa Development Bank will be central in addressing Africa's challenges by financing climate change mitigation, adaptation, green industrialization, and closing the infrastructure gap in rail, in road networks, internet broadband, energy, and the development of our ports. As we celebrate the Africa Development Bank's 60th anniversary here in Nairobi, it is vital for us as African leaders to support the bank's transformative role by supporting its access to concessional resources for our continent's transformation. Additionally, it is time, as I said, to support an African-created rating agency that will provide accurate and fair assessment of Africa's economic realities and status. It is said in our country that poverty cannot be shared. What can be shared is wealth and prosperity. And so, Kenya can only be prosperous in a thriving continental neighborhood. That is why last week, as an engaged the American government, 60% of the time I spent prosecuting Africa's agenda, and 40% of the time I spent pushing Kenya's agenda, because I understand that there cannot be a prosperous Kenya without a thriving Africa. And therefore, I want to state without fear of any contradiction that the progress and transformation of Kenya is intertwined with that of Africa. Kenya is honored to host this meeting, and we take the boards and management of the two institutions, we thank them for this privilege. I have already requested that after hosting Africa Development Bank's annual meeting 30 years ago in 1994, and again today in 2024, it would be fair and fitting for Kenya to host again in 2054. I am told by my brother Evangelist Adesina that my request is under consideration. I would request that this decision be made early, because neither we nor the decision makers then might be fit enough to do so 30 years from now. Once again, I welcome you all to Nairobi and Kenya and wish you fruitful deliberations during this annual meeting of the African Development Bank and African Development Fund. I urge you to take time to sample the delights that Kenya has to offer, including a national park, which is just 10 minutes away from here. Thank you very much. Happy 60th anniversary, Africa Development Bank. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President, but I see that you're already overthrowing my president as the evangelist for Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, we have spent quite an awful long time today. And we don't want you to continue to spend a lot of time, but we just have one little thing to do. The unveiling of the next 10-year strategy of the bank, which will take just a very few minutes. Can you please animate? And as you animate, can you please get copies ready? And I will call upon the President of the Republic. I will call upon the President of the African Development Bank. I will call upon the Chairperson of the African Union Commission and the Chairperson of the Board of Governors to please stand in the middle as they bring the copies for you to unveil. But prior to that, could you please animate? May I call on Caroline Kende-Robb and Nancy Baker to please bring copies. So here you have it, unveiled the next 10-year strategy of the African Development Bank Group. Governors' copies will be shared out to you. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, the Head of State. Thank you, Chairperson of the African Union Commission. And thank you, Chairperson of the Board of Governors. And to close this session, may I please invite the Senior Vice President, Swazi Shabalala, to give a vote of thanks.
Good afternoon. I'm well aware that I'm standing between you and lunch, so I will be very brief. Excellencies, distinguished guests, Chairperson of the Board of Governors of the African Development Bank, Governors of the African Development Bank, alternate Governors of the African Development Bank, Board of Directors, senior management, and hope that is everyone. I am honored to stand before you today at this auspicious occasion as we commemorate the African Development Bank's 60 years of existence in this beautiful city, the green city in the sun, Nairobi. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to convey our gratitude to the government and the people of Kenya for the cordial and very warm hospitality and all the measures taken to ensure the success of the 2024 annual meetings of the African Development Bank. We are greatly honored that you could be part of these celebrations today. Your bank is the realization of the dream of our illustrious forebears, that the African Development Bank would transform the continent into the Africa we want. Thank you for celebrating the journey and the remarkable achievements of our institution, even as we acknowledge the long road ahead towards prosperity and the fulfillment of Africa's aspirations. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me express on behalf of the bank our deep gratitude to the governors, executive directors, the president, the chief, what do we call you again? The chief, he's got lots of names, and every single staff of the bank, past and present, for their dedication and commitment. And in conclusion, it is with the utmost sincerity that we express our hope for the continued success of the African Development Bank. Thank you, merci beaucoup, obrigada, shukran, asanteni sana. Thank you.
And thank you very much, SVP. Let me use this opportunity to profusely apologize to the initially planned 2 panels. But you can believe that we've had literally all the panels that we are supposed to have. And because heads of state have stayed for too long and lunch is getting cold, we'll rather transition to lunch and deeply apologize to the other 2 panels so that governors can do their work, because we still have the first sitting. So as we finish, we'll proceed for the higher level luncheon by invitation only. I'm sure you have your invitation. And may I invite my Kenyan counterpart to announce about a particular lunch that will follow also.
Thank you, Secretary General. There's lunch for everybody, so don't panic. So those who are not in the high-level lunch, right next to the high-level tent, there's lunch for everybody. And why don't we give ourselves a wonderful round of applause for being patient and staying till this time. And with that, I will request that we all be upstanding. We're going to have the 2 anthems again. We'll start with the African Union anthem and then finish with the Kenyan anthem. And after that, we'll kindly request that we remain standing as we allow the heads of state to exit towards the high-level lunch. Then the rest of us will be guided. For now, we start with the African Union African Union anthem.